Okay, real life traders. I think if I'm correct, this is Wednesday, right? Wednesday, December 6th, 3 o'clock. So we've got 1 hour to go before the markets close. I want to share with you, let me get rid of, we don't need to see these floating controls, right? Yeah. Want to share with you just my analysis on some of the trades I've been looking at because I have been looking to get into something. I mean, with the way everything is, has been pushed down today, I thought for sure there would be some type of a bounce. So I'm going to walk you just through the setups I was considering and looking at. I have not pulled the trigger on a single one of them this afternoon, just for the various things that I'm going to explain to you. So let's just go ahead and we'll walk through. So let's start with Peter. Let's start with AMD for you. Okay. So here's let's first just go start with the daily chart and the 3-minute chart, right? So right, so retest gap, right? We've got a green candle gapping up that just sold off pretty much. I mean, it ran up a little bit initially, right? You can see that right on the open, it ran up, and then it's just been a downward move all day long, right? So we are making, so this is a 3-minute chart that we're looking at here. Here's a daily chart. I mean, that's a pretty big uh bearish candle. And what we have right now, right? So this is on a swing trade level that you want to just be aware of and thinking about is that what we do have right now is a bearish engulfing candle. Now, granted, when I'm looking for like on a swing trade level, something that I might want to take on a higher time frame, like the daily chart, I would rather see this bullish engulfing at the top of a move, but still it's a pretty good sideways consolidation here. You have this bearish engulfing. So we could get a bigger move down on a swing trade level, right? So let me zoom out a little bit here. Let's just get a sense for what we are looking at and what I would be thinking. So if we do roll over here, where are we looking to go? Let's throw in some fib retracements, which I absolutely love to use. Throw this up here, right? So fib retracements, right? So buying zone, not a dedicated level necessarily, but a zone. And that zone that we would be looking at is a pullback anywhere between the 38.2 and I like to look at the 66 here. But what I notice here, just throwing on these fibs, is look where we have the daily 50 and the daily 100 right there at the 50%, right? So we've made a good move here from this low right down here of 93.12, made a nice move up here. So having a pullback would make sense, right? And so if I was looking at this over the next couple of days, I wouldn't be surprised, especially with this bearish engulfing candle here, to see some type of a pullback down here into this 50% retracement. So, and especially, just look at what has happened today, right? Nothing but a series of lower lows and lower highs, right? Ever since, ever since basically 10 o'clock this morning, just lower lows, lower highs, right? We're just running lower. So, if I'm looking to trade something today, right, I'm just looking at the broader picture right now in terms of the daily picture and the fact that we do have this bearish engulfing and the fact that we are pulling back some, and it wouldn't be surprising to me to pull right down into this, basically the 109, 40, 50 level, something like that. So if I go into the daily picture at this point in the day, 3 o'clock, right, even 2 o'clock, I'm not really looking at this 3 o'clock chart anymore, or a 3-minute chart. That's me. Okay. Just the way I approach trading at this time of day, I'm looking at the 5:15, the 30-minute, the 1 hour. So if I go into the 5 and the 15 here, right? So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for those signs that maybe a bounce could be coming. Okay. And for me, what I'm looking for, especially after a big down move, is some type of a hammer candle with volume, right? To show me that this could be just selling exhaustion, capitulation, whatever you want to call it. And, I look here, And that was the first thing that caught my eye, right? So how could I play that? And I've talked about the two different ways I will approach this. One is I will play it more conservatively, and I will wait for a confirmation candle to come in here, and then I'll just set up a limit buy. Like, so for instance, if I did this and I waited for the confirmation candle, again, none of this price action would have happened yet. My entry would have been right here, stop down here. That's if I was waiting for the confirmation candle. And really good, this is a pretty good example of why I, more often than not, I approach my trades this way, because look what happened. Anybody who saw this, and like, first of all, again, meets my criteria, volume spike, right? So after this big move down here, right, look at the volume spike. Look at the volume, look at the size of this bearish candle here, and look at the associated volume. Now look at this candle and look at the volume, right? So completely different. This is a bullish looking candle, nice lower wick. That's buying pressure. It's not a perfect hammer, but it's hammer-ish. But look at that candle versus that candle and look at the volume on it, right? Compared to this one. So it meets my criteria. And so here I'm seeing, two hammers, right? At the bottom of a move, decent volume spike, right? And that's key for me, is seeing that volume spike. And then at that point, I have to make a decision. Am I going to do a bracket trade? Meaning, am I just going to put my entry above whenever price gets above this hammer candle, I'm triggered in, stop down below? Or do I take my more conservative approach and I wait for some type of a strong confirmation candle? What I'll be looking for is a close above this candle, strong close above this, and then throw in a limit buy and look for price to come back to me and trigger me in that way. So this is a really good example of why, more often than not, I take that approach, meaning I wait for the confirmation candle, then I set up my limit buy. Because if you just bracketed this candle, you would have been trapped, right? Here's perfect trap here, perfect trap here, right? Price broke above it, and then what did it do? It immediately rolled down. So if I grab this line here and I pull this up here and I say, okay, well, here would have been my, roughly, right? Here would have been my entry somewhere around there above this candle, right? This candle, all three of these candles would have triggered me in, right? If that was my entry. And what happened? Triggers you in, because everybody, those orders that are sitting there, those stop limit, buy orders that are sitting there, everybody sees them, right? Big money sees it, the computers, the algos, they all know those orders sitting there. So what do? They run up price, trigger in all those orders, and then they reverse it. Classic bull trap right here, right? Trigger you in, turn around, roll over, hit your stop. I mean, and there's nothing worse, right? We've all been there where you get triggered in. I mean, yes, it could be worse if it was one single candle that triggered you in and then rolled over and triggered you out. And that has happened to me. But to get triggered in, right, and then this happens and it doesn't even give you an opportunity to move your stop. So you're just losing a full R just right off the bat. So when I looked at this, and I was watching this, I was looking at it. And so at 1345, again, if I come over and I look at 1345, right, that candle 1345 started here, right? So yeah, you get this candle that on the 15-minute that is hammerish, right? So you do have this, they are in alignment, meaning that there's a hammer here at 1345, and at 1345, granted, this candle hadn't fully formed. So this candle would have been starting to form at 1345. So you really got to kind of go to the candle before that and look how bearish that looks, right? So this was starting at 1345 or 145 if you don't want to do military time. So at 145, when this candle, right, was started, this went from 145 to 150, right? And then this candle went from 150 on. So when this candle had closed from at 150, this candle was still forming, right? And I don't know, right? Because this goes to this goes up until 2 o'clock. So I don't know what this looked like at that time, but on the 15-minute chart, if I look at this, I look at this big bearish candle, like I just can't go in bullish at this point if I'm not seeing some convincing, reversal signal here. And I didn't, right? Because this candle hadn't fully formed when this had happened. So just another example of sometimes, right? And again, it's a kind of intuition, I think, because when I look at this, I have a sense for, is this really a place to bounce, or is this just going to be some type of trap? I guess over time, I've developed this intuition about it, and I just get a sense for it. So I really don't have a like a way to explain the times that I will take a breakout and the times that I will wait for confirmation. It's just a feeling, I guess, that I've developed over time. But I didn't take it because I just didn't see the setup, right? When I was looking at the higher time frame. So let's go back to 1345, 145, right? Let's go now into the higher time frame and let's look at what this looked like. Right. So it looked okay on the 5-minute, kind of looked on the 15-minute. But now when I go to the 30-minute and the 1 hour, right, at that 1345 would have been somewhere in here at one point. So this, at one point, this was a bigger bearish candle. It didn't have the bullish look to me, right? This would have been all this, yes, this is buying pressure, but at one point, this would have been a big bearish candle during that time frame that I was looking at it. Just did not have that bullish appeal. Same thing over here. Just look how bearish this looks. So anyway, long way of explaining to you the reason that I passed on setting up anything on AMD. And I've still been looking at it. And Peter, hopefully this is helping you, but I was still looking at it on, for a setup, but I'm just not seeing anything that is convincing me that there is a bounce coming, right? I'm not seeing, especially in the higher time frames. I would love to be able to see on the 30-minute or the 1 hour some type of a bullish hammer candle, right? That's going to give me some sense that there's a bounce is coming. So that's AMD. I'm just going to walk through each of the ones I was looking at, because AMD was one of the setups that I was looking for and looking at, but just based on the higher time frames, I just could not bring myself to set that up, right? I want to see, especially at this time of day. Now we're getting even later now, right? Because it's almost 3:15, so we would only have 45 minutes left in the market. But at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1:30, 1 o'clock, right? I'm going to be looking at those higher time frames more and more and relying on them to guide me when it comes to setting up and taking a trade. And if I don't see those setups on those higher time frames, I'm just going to pass. So, but anyway, AMD, be interesting to keep an eye on this the rest of the week and see what it does, right? Because this looks pretty bearish right now, right? Tomorrow, if we break, so what do we have here? This is the low. They're all pretty close. 116.55, 116.45, 116.37. So anyway, there's definitely some support here. If that breaks, I wouldn't be surprised if even in one day, if not maybe 2 days, but I wouldn't be surprised if one day we just got this, rollover down here to the 50, 50% retracement right here, right? And again, look at the volume, right? Volume is picking up and it's a pretty big bearish candle. So I'm going to keep an eye on that. But how that he has a swing trade set up on AMD breaking that candle. So a swing trade to Kevin to go bearish. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. There you go. I wasn't even aware of that. Right. But yeah, I see it. Totally. Right. If this level gets broken, for sure, I can see that rolling over. Right. You can do that with shares. You can do it with puts. I am going to take this moment to hop on my soapbox for a second. look, trade your own plan, but I'm just going to tell you what I tell people who I coach and I mentor, which is myself personally, I do not go short if I'm going to do a swing trade. Like I will short during intraday session, the intraday session, I will short using shares. That's fine because I'm in and I'm out. I'm not going to be holding that, right? I do not, and I'll repeat, absolutely do not short shares on a swing trade level myself. Okay. And you might go, well, why not? Well, the problem with shorting shares on a swing trade level is your risk is infinite. Meaning, if you go short, you get triggered in, and then the next day you get 100-point gap up, you're screwed, right? And then it just keeps running, right? I'm not willing to my personal risk tolerance. I'm not willing to take that risk. So I personally do not short shares on a swing trade level. If I'm going to go short on a swing trade level, I'm doing it with puts, right? So I'm going to buy puts to go short on something. And the reason being is, again, when you short the shares, your risk is infinite. There's no cap to your risk, right? Versus if you go long shares, right? If you go long shares, well, your risk is whatever your entry is down to zero, right? So there is a defined risk there. But when you are short shares, price can just keep going up, right? To any number, right? I just don't want to, personally, I don't want to get caught in that. So the reason I say that if I'm going to go short, I'm going to do it with puts, is that the puts options have a defined risk. So you buy an option, whether it's a call or a put, you're buying something, and whatever that cost is of that put, you know your risk, right? You know, if you went with an absolute zero strategy, meaning that I'm going to buy this put and I'm not even going to use a stop, I know what my total loss is going to be up front. It's much more manageable. It's a much safer approach to shorting on a swing trade level. So just something to consider. All right. So, but yeah, so Kevin, I definitely could see that happening, that setup. So keep an eye on that. And interesting, I didn't even know that Jeremy had that set up for the swing trade. Let me just remove this. I'll just go through another couple more. What Peter, you had also mentioned Tesla. Tesla was another one, right? I've got some lines on here that you'll see here in a second. Right. So I've got some lines where I actually had a trade set up. I just couldn't do it, right? So Tesla. Couple things, right? So, and I know that there were some comments in the chat when Johnny was on, and it's true, right? So I'm not a fan of inside days. I don't like necessarily to trade anything that is an inside day, because typically inside day just means there's going to be a lot of chop. And I just think, okay, if something that I want to trade is an inside day, do I want to get, caught up in the chop of that? Or do I want to just go look for something that's not an inside day? And there's so many other, tickers out there and trade setups. It's like, I don't need to get, solely focused on one ticker. So if I'm looking at something, I'm like, oh, I love to trade Tesla, but it's an inside day, I can pass, I can walk away. I can, just, go find something else to trade. But so first thing about Tesla, inside day, right? So, and look at, I mean, that's a lot of selling pressure here from yesterday. That would have been a big, huge bullish candle at one point. Selling pressure pushed it down, but we are trading inside. So again, I right away would be expecting some type of chop. But I did look at this, and I was looking, and I'll share with you what I saw. And we'll just, go through the same analysis that we did with AMD, which was just my thought process on when I saw it, how I analyzed it, and then the decision that I made based on my analysis. So I saw this candle come in right here, right? So going back to my criteria, what I'm looking for is a hammer at the bottom of a move. Absolutely at a double bottom would be ideal with volume. So when this candle formed, what do we have? Well, we had a double bottom, clear double bottom, hammer candle, and look at the volume spike, right? So I'm always comparing this volume to the volume immediately preceding it, and there's a volume spike on a hammer. Awesome, right? Then I was watching this, and again, this is a 3-minute chart, and we're going to go to the higher time frame in a second. But I'm watching it. I'm like, great hammer looking candle, and that's again at 142 on the 3-minute chart. Came up here, and then look at all this consolidation. And I was looking at all that consolidation. I was also looking at a lot of lower wicks, and I'm thinking, hey, lower wicks are definitely more pronounced than the upper wicks. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Maybe you can see it a little bit better. So I'm looking at this consolidation, and I'm liking what I'm seeing in the sense that there's clearly overhead resistance here, right? Price is coming up here, and it's battling this area, getting rejected, battling this area. And so I'm thinking myself, okay, if price can break that level, it can run, right? Because it's definitely overhead resistance. I mean, look at this just selling off now, but definitely overhead resistance. And I'm thinking to myself, if it can break that level, it can run. That's my initial thought, right? And I also was looking at all these, and yes, there's some slight upper wicks here, but you look at some of these candles that have these long lower wicks, and I'm thinking there's a lot of buying pressure there, right? So the buyers are definitely there. That goes without question. They're there, but the bears are definitely putting up this wall right here. And so I'm going, okay, but if it could break that level. So I had this line set up here. I had that set up, and how I was going to approach this was let this get a strong close above it. And it actually did happen, right? Get a close above it and then use that as a limit buy, right? So let price come down to it, limit buy, and then stop down here. And I didn't mention this when I was talking about AMD, but the other part to this that I always mention is that part of the decision to take the trade isn't just, what's the setup look like? I then have to verify that the reward to risk on this trade setup is there. And so meaning per my plan, I need to see a minimum of 1.2 to 1.4 R potential for a trade in order to take it. And so I go, okay, well, if I'm getting in this trade, what am I going to target for my, what am I targeting in terms of my ultimate target? Where do I think it can go? Right. A lot of people go, oh, well, back to the high day, but that's not me. If I look at this chart from today, and if I got in this trade, I'm thinking realistically, and here's my volume profile, right? Which is also hugely helpful. But I'm thinking my target had to be here, right there. And so why there and why not the high of the day? Well, it broke through it here, but then it quickly got back underneath that level. Got up here, it got rejected. Got up here, got rejected. Finally broke above it again. Didn't last long, went back under. So I know that that is a level, right? That is likely going to be where price is going to get rejected. So if that's the case, I'm not going to be aggressive and try to target way up here for my target. I'm going to be realistic. And especially when I'm looking at the volume profile here, right? So right here, this red area, that's the point of control, right? So I know because that's a point of control, that's the area where the buyers and sellers have agreed that that's a good price for this. Well, in addition to that, so right away, I know that if price is coming back up to that, that should be the level that could get rejected. Doesn't mean it has to get rejected, but right up in here is where everyone agreed that's where price was the right price so far, based on the 3-minute chart. But I also look at this node here, right, on this area that I'm outlining. So it's almost like there's this wall there above. So I'm not going to get aggressive. And actually, maybe I would even pull this down to here and just go, that's got to be my target, right? Because if I know that that's the point of control, and I know this massive node here is going to be overhead resistance, right? Because when you're looking at the volume profile, you're using it as a means of determining support resistance in addition to the other things that you're looking at, price action, right? So just look, analyzing volume on a price level versus a time level. Anyway, back to this. Yes, I could have gotten at least a 1.2 to 1.4 based on this setup. So I'm like, oh, cool, right? I could take that trade. Why didn't I take it? Well, I liked all that on the 3-minute. I went into the 5-minute. Come in here on the 5-minute, right? So on the 3-minute, let me go back to it real quick. 3-minute right here, right? At 142, there's your hammer. So great. A hammer, bottom of the move, volume. Perfect. 5-minute at 142. What do we look like? Well, not hammerish, right? I'm looking at this. I'm going, well, where's my hammer? That's what I want to trade off of, is that hammer. And there is no hammer here on the 5-minute, right? Yeah, there's some buying pressure here, but I don't see the hammer that I'm looking for. You know, the volume is there on this candle, right? So the volume spike I'm looking for, but it's not like crazy compared to the rest of it. If it was way up here, maybe different, but it's really not that pronounced on the 5-minute chart. So that was the first strike against it. And then if I go over to the 15-minute at 140, and I look at it, you know, I'm looking somewhere in here, right? And at the time, this candle was forming. So I'm thinking about this now on the 15-minute chart, and I'm going, okay, what do I have? Well, right now I have inside price action, right? Here was the last 15-minute candle that had closed. And now I'm looking at getting in here, and I go, well, it's an inside candle. And I know inside candle typically means chop. And what happened for the next, well, 15, 30, 45, 50, you know, hour, it just went sideways. So here's what I was looking at for the 15-minute chart, what I wanted to see. So based on, yes, 3-minute looked good, 5-minute didn't, wasn't giving me what I was looking for. Then I saw this, I'm like, it's an inside candle. So here's what I would have needed to see in order to take a trade on Tesla was this candle is the key candle, right? So inside, inside, inside. We are not breaking above or below. Again, back to your two choices. Bracket this candle, okay? Bracket this. So when I'm playing inside candles, I'm basically looking for what's happening now. Is a break above or below that candle. So, and it's 3:28 now, so I'm not going to take a trade this late in the day. But now that it's happening, here's what I'm looking for, okay? If I were to play this, let's say this was during the day, when I see this, especially on a 15-minute chart, right? And I start seeing all this inside movement, I'm going to look for not just, I'm looking for price to break one direction, right? Either above or below this. But again, you have to be careful of all the traps. And that's exactly what happened here. Perfect bull trap, right? Now, all the more reason why, especially on a price, a stock price like Tesla or Nvidia. So if it's a, if it's a $45, $50, $60 stock with a tight bid-ask spread, I'm typically using, 3 pennies as my entry. So if the high of this was, 203, 243.02, my entry on a lower price stock is going to be 243.05, right? So 3 cents over, right? So I'm not going to go right penny above it because that's too easy to get triggered in. When it comes to Tesla, Nvidia, the higher price ones that have a or Microsoft, right, that have a wide bid-ask spread, I'm probably going to be like 10 cents above that. So to play it safe, so if I were going to bracket it, my 243.02, so I would have been like 243.12, right? If I was going to bracket it. Something like that. High of this candle, 243.12, right? So what does that tell me? Well, it tells me maybe I need to even give it maybe 15 cents, right? Because I don't want to get triggered in on this, right? Because everyone, again, the orders are not hidden. The institutions see your orders. The high frequency traders see it. The algos, whatever you want to, the orders are out there and they're visible. So that's exactly what happened here. Run up, trigger in these orders because everyone who plays an inside candle, just the way I explained it, is waiting for a break above it or a break below it. So the way, again, I prefer to play this is let it break. Let me get a, if I was going to go bullish, let me get a nice close above the high of this candle. And then that would have been my limit buy right here. Okay. What does that do? Well, it prevents me from getting triggered into something like this. So conversely, okay, let's look at this because this is happening now. If I get a break below this level, so look at this, the low of this, 241.26, the low of this, 241.27. It's a 1 penny difference on a $250 stock, right? So what I'm looking for is a strong close below this level, which happened right here. Then I set up my limit sell. Now, again, I'm not going to do this now because it's 3:30 in the afternoon. There's not enough time left in the market, but this is a really good example, live example of how I would play this. And what I would do is I would move my stop up where I think price could retrace to, you know, wanting to get triggered in. So maybe something like that. I mean, you could get aggressive and even go a little bit higher, right? See if it could actually just retest almost perfectly that level, right? So maybe something like that, right? So entry here, because there's my confirmation candle, right? There's that strong close below that level. If you look at on the 5-minute chart, right, price came down here and just stopped almost dead even with this low over here. And then what did you get right here? Well, you got a spinning top, indecision candle. So wasn't really ready to go yet. There was still some indecision happening. So looking at the 5-minute chart, if I wanted to, maybe I'm looking at like right here for an entry, right? And then stop would go. Stop would have to go up here. Now, this is not a 10 EMA strategy. This is just setting this up as basically a breakdown and then setting up a limit sell. So what I would be looking for, this is that S-curve concept. I would be looking for price to come back up into here, hit my entry, and then roll down. Okay. Now, again, I'm not taking this trade. I'm just using this as an example of what I would look for, meaning here's my breakdown. Here's my, and you can see that it was a strong close below the level that was holding price up. So that becomes my confirmation candle. I set up my limit sell here, my stop up here. Great, right? That's probably even a little tighter than I would have. Might go a little looser with the stop on Tesla, right? But again, it's, you know, there's less than 30 minutes left in the market, so I'm not going to do it. But it'd be interesting to see how this unfolds. But this is how I would set that up. Now, the other thing that you also have to consider is this would be taking it short. Then I would have to also go back to here and go, well, even if there was more time in the day, and it looks pretty good. I'd have to just look at this from a short perspective. Let me get rid of this line up here for now. So if I look at this on just the daily chart, and I go, okay, well, if it were to roll over, where could it go? And I would just have to look at this on the daily chart and say, well, that basically would have to be my target, right? I'm not going to get that aggressive with where it's, look where, former resistance becomes support, right? So that's got to be the area that I'm going to target. The daily 10 is right there. There's a couple of reasons. So then I look at that and I go, well, if is that a 1.2 to 1.4? It's close. It's close. Let's see. It's just. So no, wouldn't give me. So I would have to pass on it anyway, right? It's not going to give me that line that I just dropped there represents 1R, right? So 1.2 would be a little bit lower than that. So it wouldn't meet my criteria anyway. So, but we can keep an eye on this in the next, 20 minutes to see what. I'll be curious how this, but again, this time of day price action isn't going to be that reliable, but that is how I would have approached this, right? So another reason why I didn't look to take Tesla long at that point. Any questions, comments? Anything on that, Peter? Is this helping you in terms of your thoughts on AMD and Tesla? Cool. Peter says super awesome. Thank you. All right, let's I'll keep keep an eye on Tesla just for the remaining part. I'll show you a couple others that I looked at, right? That I was like, all right, well, let's see if we can get something set up. Al, I don't. I mean, the RSI I have here on my daily chart, but I don't have it on any of my intraday. So I really only have it on my daily, because every single trade I look at, I'm going to look at the bigger picture first, right? So the daily chart. And that's why I have the RSI. I don't put it on my intraday charts. It's just here on my daily chart. And that's really just kind of get a sense for, is it overbought, oversold? But you got to understand, and Al, I know you know this, right? But, price can remain oversold and overbought for extended periods of time, right? So it's just like kind of a check for me. Like if I see this and it's like up here way into the oversold or overbought area, it might just have me dive a little bit deeper into the intraday stuff just to make sure. But yeah, I only have that on my daily chart, so I'm not using it intraday. And it's not really, I won't even like really use it as confirmation per se. Like I'm not gonna trade off of it. It's really just a reference thing for me to look at, just to be aware, right? Because again, I do know that price can remain overbought and oversold for extended periods of time. All right. Let us take a look at, so Roku was another one I was looking at, trying to find, just rolling through all my tickers, trying to find something to trade. So Roku again on the daily, right? So what do we have? We had a retest gap, but it just kept selling, right? Just kept series of lower lows, lower highs, just kept selling throughout the day. But I'm curious. Let's take a look at it. So here's a good example. So Al, right? So we were just talking about it. So Roku, Roku has been basically oversold. I'm sorry, overbought, right? Since the 14th, right? So we're talking, a solid 3 weeks of it being overbought. And it's still, so it's just been, and it's been continuing to go up. Only now is it starting to go back down, right? So, sometimes people will use this as the trigger, right? So you finally have our RSI line crossing, the threshold here, right? And so, and the fact that this is forming also a bearish engulfing candle, right? So this could be a potential if you were looking to go take a swing trade on Roku, looking to buy some puts, take it short. You do have, I like the location of this bearish engulfing, right? If it breaks basically this level, basically that level right here, right? Which it got close to, here was the low over here. If it breaks that, you could get a nice run down, right? To, you do have here's the 20 on the daily, but here's really the magnet that could pull it down. And let's throw on some fibs just to see where I'm curious where this level falls based on this move. There you go. Right into that buying zone, right? So just below the 50% retracement, just above the 61.8. Perfect location to potentially take Roku short right down in this area here. Right? It could totally happen. Get rid of this line. That actually should be, I'm just going to put it down there for now. Get it out of the way. Yeah, but that could be the rollover right down in this area right here. So the fact that it had been, overbought for quite some period of time, right? And 3 weeks is a pretty long time, but there's a good example right there of how price can remain overbought or oversold for an extended period of time, right? Doesn't mean it's just going to hit that level and then automatically just go back down, right? All during this period from, technically when it gapped up here and hit that overbought area, it just kept going up. And now it's just going sideways, but I could definitely see this, especially with this bullish engulfing candle, just rolling back down into here, right? So there's another potential short setup if anyone is looking to take a swing trade. But back to the intraday setup I was looking at. So right here, right? Zoom in a little bit. So what do we have? Right. So this candle came in and all of a sudden you got that volume spike, right? Now, is it a perfect hammer? No, it's not a perfect hammer, but it is a hammer. And look at, and again, I always think about the sentiment of the candles that I'm analyzing. So look at this candle with that volume compared to this candle on that volume, right? Here's a big, what I think we would all agree is a big bearish candle. Volume did pick up. And then all of a sudden you get this candle with that. Look at the increase in volume and the candles are nothing alike, right? This to me looks like a potential bounce candle, right? So I'm thinking about this going, okay, could that be an area for the bounce? And actually this line that I had here was initially based off of this candle. So maybe we'll go back to this first and then we'll look at this. But so here was my initial candle that I was looking at. I'm like, all right, I need to see a strong close above this, right? So, but the volume wasn't great. So that was already one strike against it was that, yeah, I got this kind of hammerish candle at this low, but the volume wasn't great, right? So it really didn't fit my plan. But then I saw, well, I'll continue with this and then we'll jump over to this candle. But so this came in here, and again, oddly or coincidentally, same time frame as all those other ones that we've looked at, right? So is it a coincidence? I don't know. I mean, it's the timing of the market, right? So I've often said that you can be spot on with your analysis, but completely wrong on the timing. So this is just an example of, yeah, maybe the analysis was correct, but the timing was off. But both of them were off, right? So I looked at that at 142. Again, all of these setups I was looking at were right around that same time frame. But if I go into that same time frame here on the 5-minute, so 142, right? I didn't have a hammer. I didn't have anything like really jumping out at me. Again, I have an indecision candle, right? But that's really not my thing. And what I was looking for, again, even if I was going to take it, I wanted to see a nice strong close above this level, right? So didn't really get it. Even like, yeah. And remember, when I say the key thing here is a strong close, I don't care if it closes above it. I want to see strength in the close, right? So I want to see a candle like this one sitting here, right? Strong, right? This candle didn't close above this level. It's close. This candle did, but yeah, it's got a lower wick, but it's not a crazy, and the volume wasn't great. And then you get this little tiny candle. Yeah, again, it closed above it, but it's not a convincing close. And that's really what I'm looking for. And then, of course, it just rolled over. But at 13, 140, let's just see what it looked like over here on the 15-minute chart. So 140 was following these candles here, right? And so when I looked at this, just this move right here, and these 4 candles in a row, and then I saw this, and again, I'm looking at it on the 15-minute candle. I'm not seeing anything here on the 15-minute that would tell me expect a bounce. In fact, what I looked at when I was looking at it on this time frame was I saw this, and then at 140, this candle was forming, right? Well, that was after, actually. It would have been this one. This went from 130 to 145, right? So even then, I'm looking at a bearish candle. And at one point, it would have been a bit bigger bearish candle. But even after that, once this did break up here and got above this level, again, it wasn't convincing to me. Yes, it got above it, but I'm looking at this move, and here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking on a 15-minute chart, this right here just looks like some type of a bear flag, which is exactly what it was. Right. Price came down here. Here's the flag, slight little bounce, boom, roll over. All right, kind of bounce, come back up here, retest the level, roll over. So I just didn't see, I'm not seeing anything on these higher time frames to make me think, yeah, this is a bounce candidate. This could be the low. We could be bouncing out of this. Just all I'm looking at here is just bearishness. And then even when I go back to here, this candle, right? So now we're talking 221, right? See this candle with volume, right? 221. And then let's go into the 5-minute. So it was right here, right? So I'm just seeing bearishness, right? I'm not seeing anything that is screaming to me, this is a bounce. Now, if I come over here and there was a beautiful looking hammer candle here with volume, I mean, we got it here, right? So on the 5-minute, again, we got it on the 5-minute right here, right? But no strong close above that level. Like, yes, it broke up above it, but it quickly just rolled back over. And I'm not seeing anything over here again on the 15-minute chart at that same time frame. So let's say that was 13, no, 14, 120, right here. just bearishness. Just not seeing anything that resembles anything in the terms of, hey, take me bullish. Same thing here. Right here. Just bear candles. So hopefully you're seeing how using these higher time frames, right? Just not relying. And I know there's a lot of people who just trade that 3-minute chart all day. And what happens is, the later that you get in the day, the less reliable that 3-minute chart is. And then you can just get chopped around, right? But if you are, especially later in the day, if you're looking at the 5-minute, 15, the 30, even the 1 hour. So we have the 1 hour over here, right? So on the 1 hour, what I'm going to be looking for, if I'm going to look to go bullish, is I need to see something on the 1 hour chart that's telling me change of direction. And all we've been doing here since basically 11:30 is making lower lows and lower highs. So if I were to, later in the day when I'm seeing this, I'm like going, well, I'm not even seeing a potential bounce area here on the 1 hour. So that will just keep me out of any trade that I'm looking at. I've got 9 minutes to give you another example. Another one I was looking at was NVIDIA. Before I go to NVIDIA, any questions, comments? Yeah. So Al, 100%. So Al's saying, Albert, I'm sorry, not Al. Albert is saying, Stephen, a lot of times when we see the strong bullish candle, which closes above the price, basically the stock, the candle that I'm looking at, it just goes. It does not come back. Yeah. So 100%. And so Albert, I don't know if you were here a little bit earlier when I was saying that, I really can't have I really can't provide a definitive explanation as to the times that I will do a breakout off of the hammer, or I will take the more conservative approach and I will look for that confirmation candle first. The best I could do earlier, I was just saying it was more a kind of intuition, just a feel that I have for the market. And so on days like today, like when I was setting all this up, I wasn't feeling the breakout piece, right? I was thinking more, okay, the way price action is, the way things, these traps that I'm seeing, the way that the market is going, I'm going to play it a little more conservative and I'm going to see if I can get a confirmation candle. So again, yeah, so I don't really have I can't tell you like, okay, do it this time, don't do it that time. Like it just, for me, it's just a feel, right? It's just a total sense. Yeah. And you agree. Yeah. It's just a feel for the market. Yeah. So Albert, what I was saying is more and more lately, because for a long time, Albert, what I was doing was I was only taking the limit buys or the limit sells, meaning I was waiting for that confirmation candle. And then to your point, in my back trading, I would see that a lot of the times price didn't even remotely come back to my entry, right? So I was missing a lot of trades, playing it more conservative. So then I started, allowing myself per my plan, I started allowing myself to take those breakouts, right? And breakdowns. And so that was just all from just going back and back trading that and going, okay, well, how often did these, with these setups I'm looking for, again, meaning double bottoms, hammer candle, or a new low hammer candle with a volume spike, or a double top, or a new high shooting star with volume spike, specifically with those setups. That's where I was allowed to say, okay, you know what, moving forward, I can take the breakouts and the breakdowns. I don't have to wait. But again, even like today, even though I saw these setups, just the feel that I had for the market was, it felt trappy to me. So for today, I decided not to do any breakouts or breakdowns. Yeah. So today you just totally gave up. Yeah. And you know what? That's okay, right? So as I've often said, sometimes no trade is the best trade, right? Because look, we all want to trade, right? But we don't have to trade, right? We want to, but we don't have to. And that's really something I think that people, especially newer traders, developing traders, really need to be able to process and understand is that, look, you don't have to trade every single day, right? You don't have to. I mean, you can still participate in the markets without actually taking a trade. You can set things up, you can follow price action, you can just observe, you can just soak in the information that you're seeing, right? So I love Tony's comment or his saying when Tony says, if you're not earning, you're learning, right? I heard him say that once. I'm like, I love that. So yeah. So if you're not trading and you don't, again, I want to emphasize, you don't have to take a trade. When the market is choppy, when things are just looking too difficult, just sit on your hands, observe and learn, right? So if you're not, again, Tony, great saying, if you're not earning, you should be learning, right? Put it to use. Don't click the buttons, but just sit there and observe and set things up and just see how it all would have worked out. All right, Nvidia. I have a couple more minutes, 4 more minutes. There's right, where was it? Time. Give me a second. Coincidentally, it's going to be the same. This again, you can't make this up. It's the same exact time across the board. 1:40 in the afternoon. That's when all of these setups came or presented themselves. So 1:40. Okay, so 1:40 here, interesting, on the 3-minute chart does not look bullish, right? Pretty big bearish candle here, one at 142 or 132. Let me see. Sorry, let me go back and make sure I'm looking at the right time frame. 140. So 140 was, yeah, so back here. Right in this area here, right? So again, yeah, new low, and there's some volume down here, but it's not screaming bounce to me. So what I did was I threw in this trend line here, and then I was like, all right, well, if I'm not going to take breakout, if I'm not going to take the breakout on this setup, maybe I'll try a trend line break and see if it can, break that trend line with conviction. Of course it didn't, but this was the area that I was looking at. Now let's go to the 5-minute and you'll see what I was looking at on the 5-minute. So at 140 right here, there's this hammer candle, right? Again, like it meets my criteria in terms of it's a new low, it's a beautiful looking hammer candle, and there was a bit of a volume spike, right? But again, not crazy. Like if it had been a much bigger volume spike, it would have mattered more to me, right? It would have made a difference. But if I look at this candle here, and I look at that volume, the volume on that candle, even though the sentiment of the candles is very different, but the volume is about the same, right? If I go down here and I just drop a line on top of this candle, you can see that looking left, the volume on that hammer candle isn't any greater than the big hammer volume spikes that you see that are all bearish. It's the same. So there was nothing that was jumping out at me screaming bounce here. And so I was like, so I'm going to be a little more conservative or a little more reluctant to jump into something. So this was 140. Again, beautiful hammer, but the point is not all hammers are created equal. Go down to here. So we were somewhere in this area here. Again, I had this trend line, right? So at this point, look how price has just been following that trend line. I'm like, at this point, I really if I was going to take this, I was going to need to see some type of a nice break of that trend line. It just didn't happen. Right. And I just wasn't seeing the bullish sentiment here for a bounce. Right. Great looking hammer, but not seeing anything over here. And then at 140, if I go to the higher time frames, go to 30-minute, right? 140 was somewhere. Yeah. So here's a great point is if I'm not seeing that on all the lower time frames, and then boom, right? Now would have had to wait at 140. This hammer, this was a 30-minute chart, right? So this was only halfway completed, this candle at that moment. But if I saw, looked here at the 30-minute, I saw that there was some type of a hammer forming on the 30-minute, then I go, okay, you know what? I'm going to wait until this 30-minute candle is over, and then I'm going to use the 30-minute chart to see if I can get a trade off, right? So at that point, because I'm not seeing it at all on the lower time frames, I could use the 30-minute and just trade off that and look and take and just bracket that hammer and see if that. But again, the volume on it wasn't spectacular, so that would have disqualified it anyway because I just wasn't seeing the volume. Let me see if I think who's coming on. Oh, Tracy's here.
You betcha.
You are here. All right. Let me stop my share. Let me stop my recording.